These pharma companies know there's this huge unmet need in the mental health world.
If you just focus specific on the problem, the mental health problem, this is a $1 trillion opportunity when you think about how big the problem is.
The banks will not take my shares because this isn't a psychedelic company and they're classifying it as related to cannabis, even though it's traded on the NASDAQ, literally publicly traded on the NASDAQ. If you're listening to this right now, you can invest. But me, angel investor who owns the shares on paper, I have the certificate, no banks will take my certificate. So I'm like stuck with this paper wealth that I can't sell, I can't get liquidity on.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Adventure Capitalist Podcast. This is the Halloween edition, episode 19. My name's Austin Bronner. I'm with my co-host, Sir Lancelot, Cody Shirk.
This thing's a little bit too small for my head, so I'm going to wear it back. This is kind of a cool style, though, right? You could rock this out in public.
I think you might be able to rock it at the surf park. I know you've been surfing all week. You've been in Texas, shredding the inland Central Texas coast. How was it? What was the give us kind of a rundown of what happened? You're out in Waco. For people who don't know you, you're a very good surfer, and so you're out in Central Texas just shredding.
Shredding the gnar in Texas. Yeah, so I had work in Dallas, and Waco is about an hour and a half, 2 hours south of Dallas. And if nobody knows this, Waco has a place called Waco Surf, and it's one of the first wave pools for surfing. There are other wave pools around the world in the U.S. They're kind of like these mushy waves, but the wave pool in Waco is made for surfing. And I've surfed there a couple of years ago, and it was fun. It was shockingly fun. So I had work in Dallas the past several days. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a suicide mish, drive down midnight, and then surf all the next day. And it was a blast. It was super fun. And I think, prediction here, surf parks, there's over 70 being built around the world right now. It's going to be the new country club. Like you think of golf country clubs, that's what's going to happen with these surf parks. So prediction.
We're gonna go into it today because there's a lot of stuff going on, and Austin has had multiple, right? So I surfed at one of them. We'll dive into it and something we want to talk about today. But before we do, I want to go in and talk a little bit about welcome all the new listeners this week and give a shout out to Pinkatron, who wrote us a 5-star review. He says, I personally know people who pay thousands of dollars to go to the conferences that Cody mentions. And on this podcast, they're giving away a lot of the content and ideas from those places. And these are high level people and ideas, not your typical stock picking analysts. It's crazy that they're able to repeat this stuff outside the meetings. Worth the money. 5 stars. Thank you, Pinkatron. Welcome all the new listeners. And if you enjoy this, the best way you can support us is write a review. We're going to get in. We got a big episode today. Lots of stuff to talk about. But before we dive in, I just want to give you guys kind of a rundown. Cody and I have been traveling the world for the last couple decades. We created this podcast to keep you up to date with what's going on in the business world and in the geopolitical world. We've got a lot of opportunities that we're working on in different deals around the world, places like Guyana, Latin America, other Latin America, under the radar places. Cody was just speaking at an event talking about some of his favorite international investing ideas. If you're interested in getting involved, send us an email at consulting@adventurecapitalist.com, and we can get you some more information.
And I promise we're more professional than we look right now. If you're listening to this, not watching this, Austin looks like a cross between Wayne's World, steampunk, California surfer. It kind of works, man. Those like welding goggles you have, like we've got some Burning Man vibes.
I'm a what I am is a steampunk Mongolian coal miner.
I love it. That's going to be our topic today, right? Coal in Mongolia and surfing. So
coal in Mongolia. I got to fix your
outfit is perfect.
These things are fogging up on me.
Don't let our unprofessional appearance persuade you from thinking we're not serious, because we are.
Well, let's dive into our first serious topic today, which is investing in psychedelics. It was a huge thing now it may be back again. I'm gonna kind of dive into what happened with Bright Minds Biosciences, which you know a lot about. You've been an investor. Bright Minds, it saw its stock rocket higher up to, I think initially it went up about 1,500% to $38. Then it's settled in at around 46, and it was trading at like 250 a share. And for the last year, it's been between $1 and $2. So in like a week and a half, it went up. What is that? Like 4,000%, 5,000%. So massive bump, massive boost, one of the biggest gainers in the markets. Was that potentially your biggest 5-day pop ever?
Oh yeah, hands down. And to be clear, I say this, I'm going to sound like I'm bragging right now. I was an angel investor in that company. So to see this company pop, it went public and then it popped again. I still haven't sold shares. I have the rest of the story, which is a tragedy, which I'll tell in a second. But yes, I was in very early in this company in 2020. I've been riding this thing for 4 years now. My gains are, I don't know. I mean, they're huge. They're huge right now. But there's another side of the story I'll tell in a second. So the reason why it popped, I don't know if you're going to get to that, but I'm going to jump on that right now. The reason why it popped is because there's a bunch of companies out there right now researching psychedelics, and a lot of them have either discovered or invented synthetic molecules that are aimed at targeting certain mental health conditions, addiction, depression, suicidal tendencies, like really big problems around the world and our mental health world. And these companies are targeting molecules that they can develop and make into drug form. So that's kind of what the psychedelic medicine market is aimed at doing right now. But this company in particular that just skyrocketed, nothing happened with the company. And a lot of people were thinking like, what the heck happened? This is insider trading. This is some scam. Like why is this stock going up 4,000% in a matter of a couple of days? And the answer to that is that another company, totally separate, unrelated, has a similar molecule that was just acquired for like $3 billion. And so Bright Minds has a similar molecule that has not been acquired, has not even really been noticed in the market, but some investors were like, holy crap, if Bright Minds even gets a fraction of the amount of success that this other company did, it's going to be worth way more. So before the stock popped, the company market cap was around $10 million. And I don't know where it is today, but it's around like $150 million right now. So it more than 10x just from the pop of this news of the unrelated company.
Yeah.
But so Bright Minds right now is valued at $150 million ish, using ish because it fluctuates day to day. But if it gets a similar deal as that other company, it could 10x again. And I think the thing for investors to think about, or someone who's like, oh, is investing in psychedelics a thing? Like, absolutely. And there's a ton of companies out there right now that are super cheap. And there's absolutely the possibility that another molecule could be targeted by one of those big pharma companies and get acquired. So I hope that makes sense. That's kind of in a nutshell what happened.
What happened with Stephen Cohen?
So Stephen Cohen, 0.72, he took a stake in Bright Minds. What was it, like $30 a share or something like that?
I think it was 28.
28. Okay, $28 a share. Right now it's trading around $50 ish a share today. So yeah, he's up already huge, but he took a huge stake in this company. If you don't know him, 0.72, Stephen Cohen, a legendary investor. So this was a huge vote of confidence for Bright Minds, but also the psychedelic medicine sector as a whole. So I don't know if more name brand investors are going to jump into this world, but I would be shocked if we don't see more in the next year or so.
I think it's very interesting because it aligns with a massive problem, right? All we can see, if you just focus specifically on the problem, the mental health problem, and the opportunity to solve it, that's where a lot of these big numbers come in my mind. It's like, this is a $1 trillion opportunity when you think about how big the problem is. And so let's go into also another announcement, which is from earlier this year, which is AbbVie and Gilgamesh Pharmaceuticals. They announced a kind of a collaboration. So AbbVie and Gilgamesh Pharmaceuticals announced a collaboration and option to license agreement to develop the next generation therapies for psychiatric disorders. The collaboration will leverage AbbVie's expertise in psychiatry, and Gilgamesh's innovative research platform to develop novel neuroplastogens. So this is a pretty big collaboration. What You've been in the psychedelic space for a while. What was your take on why did they do this, and why should people care?
So Gilgamesh, which I was also an angel investor in, I invested in a ton of psychedelics companies. And again, I'm not saying it to brag because there's a second part of the story. It's like a warning sign for everybody. But I've been in Gilgamesh since the very beginning. It was founded by a guy, Jonathan Sporn, who actually exited another pharma company in the past, which is why I had conviction investing with him. But they were approached by AbbVie. Gilgamesh Pharmaceuticals was approached by AbbVie, and AbbVie licensed their molecules for a certain time frame for this certain amount of money, which is literally in the billions of dollars. So the deal here is that AbbVie wants access to this molecule before it comes to market, and AbbVie was basically they proposed this deal to Gilgamesh that said, hey, we'll pay you this amount of money if you hit these certain amount of benchmarks over a certain amount of time, and all these contingencies. Again, the big point here is that Gilgamesh's molecule is not even on market yet, and AbbVie is paying billions of dollars to license it before it's even ready. And
it's like a cash deal. Money. It's like millions up front, and then a royalty licensing deal down the road. Like
it's a massive deal,
like 1 point some billion.
Yeah, it's a massive deal. And again, the bigger picture of what you said, these pharma companies know there's this huge unmet need in the mental health world, and they've seen success with other drugs like the GLP-1s and other antidepressants. But these psychedelic molecules, a lot of people think are like the magic bullet. Like a lot of these pharmaceutical products in the market right now for mental health are kind of band-aids on issues, whereas these other psychedelic ones are, again, like these next level of care and next level of efficacy. So the pharma companies are looking at these microcaps, biotech companies that happen to be researching psychedelic molecules, and they're saying, if we even get one of these, this could make or break our pharma company far into the future. So they're paying huge amounts of money for them right now before they're even on market, which is incredible. Huge opportunity for investors right now.
Well, do you want to get into your sad story?
Yeah. So the sad story. So it sounds like I'm like, oh, I was an angel investor in these two companies. If you have ever been a venture capitalist or somebody who invests in early stage companies, you know what actually happens in the process. So in the news, you hear about these big name tech guys like, oh, I was a first investor in Facebook, or I was a first investor in Instagram, and then we had this exit and I got a check for $1 billion. That's not how it works at all. How it actually works is you go along in this ride where you put money into the company first. Maybe you're angel investor, first round, Series A, whatever, and you get diluted along the way because they're raising more and more money. I actually did not get diluted very much in either of these companies, but once you are in these companies, you're in them, and it's very hard to get liquidity, which basically means selling your shares on the open market. If a company goes public, even when a company goes public, the shares that you own are still typically locked up for usually 6 months to a year. So when there's an IPO, you're thinking all the early investors are like, oh, you won, you got the lottery ticket. No, you're still locked up for a long time. And the reason why that is because you don't want the market being flooded with all these shares of early investors selling. But my specific situation. So I just explained, you got your dilution, you got your lockup period, and then you got all kinds of risks in between. But my specific issue is that the banks will not take my shares because this isn't a psychedelic company and they're classifying it as related to cannabis, even though these companies, for example,
not
Bright
related
Minds,
to cannabis at all.
And it's traded on the NASDAQ. It's literally publicly traded on the NASDAQ. If you're listening to this right now, you can invest in Bright Minds. But me, angel investor who owns the shares on paper, either certificate, no banks will take my certificate. They're saying, oh, you're involved in an illegal industry, blah, blah, blah. So we're not going to take your shares. So I'm like stuck with this paper wealth that I can't sell. I can't get liquidity on. And my point with saying that it's this kind of like there's two sides of the story. This other side of the story is you end up thinking you have this big win, but in reality, you go through this long multi-year process of emotional roller coasters. And then when it does come time for you to cash out your check, you still can't. So that's the tale of a lot of early stage investors.
It comes down to this is like what happens when you invest in like speculative industries, right? And there's big upsides that come with big risks. And I want to dive in and talk a little bit about what happened to a company called Lycos, because this company was in the news a few months ago because they were a front runner to bring psychedelics into mainstream medicine. They were seeking approval from the US FDA for a therapy combining MDMA with psychotherapy to treat PTSD. Obviously, massive opportunity there, what we're talking about, to treat mental health. But they were declined. So the FDA declined to approve its application and requested an additional clinical trial to support the therapy's safety and efficacy. At the time, people were like, well, I was frustrated. Anybody who's been following in the psychedelic space, a lot of people were frustrated. It was interesting because I went and read through one of the reports, and I wanted to see like what actually happened there. Like what were the reasons that they shut it down? And the two major issues they said were concerning the validity of the trial. One of them was that many of the participants in the trials, including therapists and some number of the patients, came from a community with strong prior beliefs about the value of psychedelics for management of serious mental health conditions. And then the second one was that because of the effects of MDMA, the trials were essentially unblinded, right? There's just almost no way for you to not know that you're on MDMA. It's just not going to happen. Like you're going to know that you got it. And then there's a couple of other interesting things that kind of got sidelined. One of them was a sexual misconduct thing with therapists. And my takeaway from reading it was not that it's not going to happen, but the way that things were done in this specific trial weren't above board. And there's a really messed up double-blind standard that just isn't going to work with psychedelics until they figure that out. That's going to be a massive, massive thing holding back treatment because this opportunity is massive. But if you're expecting people to not know that they're on psychedelics, you're going to be mistaken.
And it's so ironic. That's ironic though, because to be clear, double blind is when one group of people or two groups of people take a drug, but only one group of those participants actually is taking the drug that has the efficacy. The other one's taking like a sugar pill or whatever, or something that's not the actual drug. And the test is to see if one group performs better than the other. And what you're saying, Austin, is that the feeling of being on a psychedelic is like, it's like the other group that took the sugar pill or whatever fake pill it was.
They're going to know
like,
they're not on it.
Yeah. Like there's no way to differentiate or to compare the two. And it's ironic because the whole test is to see if somebody feels it or not and see what the efficacy is. But psychedelics work so well with changing the way you think or the way your mind's working that it's impossible to run a double blind. But I wanted to make a comment on the FDA because I think within the psychedelics community, which I've been a part of for a long time on the business side, I've built a couple companies there. I've been a very active investor in the industry. There is this belief that the FDA is corrupt and the FDA is very against putting these mind-altering drugs through the proper steps to bring them to market because the FDA is influenced by pharma companies that feel like psychedelics are a threat. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't funny business going on out there, but I would say in general, I'm very anti-government, low government regulation. I'm very low tax type of person. I will say though, the FDA probably overall does a pretty good job. And if you think about putting a pill into your body, you want to be really careful about what you're doing. And if they're the regulating body that is controlling the health and potentially life, death of a US or global consumer, you want to make sure you're right. And quick statistic is that of all drugs that are approved by the FDA, within 10 years, almost 2/3 of all drugs ever approved by the FDA typically have some sort of recall for a massive side effect that was unseen during the trials. So the point is that the FDA is really stringent, but still there's a lot of stuff that slips through the cracks. So as it applies to MDMA for this Lykos trial, the FDA did not approve it, but the FDA a couple weeks ago did come out with some guidelines, and they said that, hey, we're not saying we're never going to approve MDMA. We're just saying this specific trial did not meet our criteria, and we are encouraging you to resubmit a trial, and here are some guidelines to help you get through this trial. So they are encouraging of the process. It's just that this first one with Lykos did not go through.
Yeah. And I mean, to push back on that, it's like there are many drugs that get approved that seem to be far more dangerous than MDMA. Yes. And, you know, you just watch any either news show or watch a national football broadcast, and it's like side effects may include blood in stool, vomiting,
your legs falling
eyeballs
off,
falling out, all for something that will help you, you know, with your acne. So
yeah, and as somebody who's been in the psychedelics world, just if somebody doesn't know, psychedelics have a very low risk profile, and when you compare it to what you just said, many pharmaceutical drugs on the market now, it's an apples and oranges comparison of the risk profile and side effects,
sure.
long-term side effects. So
for sure. Well,
that's where a lot of the frustration came.
Get to wave pool stuff, because I think it's really, so you were just at the wave pools in Central Texas. You talked about how many of these things are being built right now in the US and around the world. I want to talk about this first one that you sent me, which is wild. $539 million wave garden is set to break ground on Florida's otherwise uninspiring East Coast. So this massive 200-acre Willow Lakes Resort Village is set to go. $595 million project. And that's one of a bunch of projects. And it's interesting too, because, you know, this project is moving forward. To your point earlier in the podcast, you said it's like going to be the next country club type thing. They've got rentals going on. It's interesting because there's one in California that was supposed to move ahead with Kelly Slater's wave company called Coral Mountain. That was going to be similar, a kind of residential hotel with a massive wave pool, but it got canned because the La Quinta government pushed back and said, we don't want to have this. We want golf instead. So it's very interesting to me. On a macro level, we got Florida and California. Florida, things are moving forward. California, not happening.
Yeah, and if anybody's listening to this and you're not a surfer, there is a punchline here that's very interesting for an investment. So I wanted to throw that in there. If you're not a surfer, still listen to this, because it's a very compelling opportunity.
Well, let's talk about it. So you've got all these big surf parks being built. Also in Texas, there's 7 of them that are going to be built right now. They're calling it the new North Shore. And one of them is like this $400 million Pura Vida adventure community that is going to be built. So as a surfer, somebody who has spent their entire life in the ocean, where do you think this is going? And what does the future of surf look like in the US and worldwide, given all of this technology to build artificial waves?
When I was in high school, I had this bumper sticker on my car that said, don't surf, it sucks, or like, don't try surfing, it sucks. And within the surf culture, you don't want people to surf because waves around the world are finite, and the last thing you want is more people learning how to surf, because it's going to crowd the lineups and blah 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 blah. And I think, as I get older, I get a little bit more, have some more perspective that the world's not such a selfish place.
Well, it's not necessarily that they're finite, it's that they're finite in places where people live.
True, but also even some of the places that are really remote, really good waves can get crowded quickly, even with a small group of people. So I just want to put that out there, because that has been a big reason why surfing in the past has been this kind of underground sport, is because you can't replicate a wave anywhere. And so many surfers don't want more people to join the sport. So throwing that out there. Okay, so the bigger picture of what you're talking about is these resorts going in, and the best way I can explain it is go look at your local country club or some like high profile golf course with, you know, all the homes around it that sell for millions of dollars. You got the clubhouse, the restaurant, you got the gym, you got the you know, cold plunge, the sauna, like all the amenities in this high class resort. Now take away the golf and put in a wave pool, a surf park. And that's what these resorts are doing around the world. So there's several interesting things happening here. First of all, it's catering to this group of surfers that previously had no like corporate or like structured way to access consistent waves. Yes, there are resorts in different countries you can go stay at. Yes, there's like private islands, but there's nowhere where like there's this central wave being built, man-made, and then intentionally built communities around that wave. So I think that's an interesting proposition for surfers who haven't traditionally invested in getting access to wave. The second thing is that the way to monetize this, you buy tickets to go surf. So all these surf parks, you can either purchase a share in like a house or a membership, or you can just come in and pay a ticket. And every surf park has a different model. But the point is like, this is a money-making like business now, whereas like the ocean is nature. You can't really charge people to go surf a wave at the beach. And then I think the third thing, the biggest thing, is that this unlocks a sport and an activity to all kinds of landlocked people. Surfing is traditionally available to people living on the coast, so now all of a sudden you have this huge demographic of people that can get access to waves now. So there's so many things going on here.
I think that what they're really trying to do is solve the issue that was plaguing wave pools, which is, so there was one in Austin called Inland. I used to go surf there. And the problem with Inland, though, is that it was so expensive to go in a one-off basis, and they built all this infrastructure around it. And the reality is most people who want to use Inland, they wanted to do it all the time, and they want to do it like often. I remember going there, and there was this guy who I've never seen. It was in the middle of Austin summer, so it was so hot. His entire body was covered with zinc oxide, and he was just ripping. And I was talking to somebody like, who is that guy? And they're like, well, he's a local dermatologist who comes every single day. And he's got an annual pass, and he drives out after work and he surfs every single day. So the reality is there's these people like golfers who are obsessed and want to do it all the time. But the problem is the way that the model has been, where you're like paying $200 to go per day, it just hasn't worked out that well. So this idea of trying to shift it into a way where you've got people living around it that are paying for it seems like they're trying to solve the financial issue. I think the interesting opportunity here is, one, Inland in Austin closed down, and Kelly Slater's company bought it, but they've been fighting to try to move to this new model and get, you know, some residential housing around it, and it's just not working. There's a lot of golf and ski operations that have got started. Then the first guys lose their shirts, and the second ones pick them up and figure out how to make it happen. And I think this is going to happen with surfing here, is you've got these wave pools, and people are at the forefront trying to make it happen. And there's going to be some opportunities to get involved and make money in the second half.
There's a variety of different technologies, which you're alluding to, that have been more or less successful in the past. And maybe we can show a couple while I'm talking right now. First of all, there's a plunger technology, which is put out by Surf Lakes. And this is in Australia. It's like this gigantic, like plunger looking thing. And
is that the best? Is this the one that you like the most?
No, I've never surfed it. It's in Australia right now, but that company's trying to produce it. It basically lifts this plunger up, and we'll show a video of it, and like it falls down and makes these like ripples in this huge lake and makes waves. And there's multiple places to surf around this thing. So it's not just one wave. So that's one technology, but it costs a lot of money to not only develop that, but like the energy to lift that plunger up and let it fall. It's very expensive to do that. The second technology is what's at Waco Surf. They have this huge fan, a bunch of fans, and it blows air into this chamber, which then ends up pushing water out the other end of the chamber. It's kind of technical. And then that water, when it gets pushed up, makes a ripple effect in this pool and then makes a wave. That is only one wave at a time. So only one person could be surfing at a time. And that's what I surfed in Waco. And it's cool. And you can surf a lot because they can do wave after wave after wave. But in terms of like a big wave or high quality, it's like, I would say kind of somewhere in the middle. There's another technology, which is Kelly Slater Waves Pool. And it's this like huge wedge that's driven along this like railroad track, and you can just think of like a wedge going underwater, and it pushes out this wave. That's probably the highest quality wave. The problem is it takes like 10, 15 minutes to reset it for just one wave, and it's ungodly expensive. So the Kelly Slater waves, the best. And in fact, World Surf League acquired Kelly Slater's waves. There's only 2 in operation right now, one in Lemoore, California. The other one's in Abu Dhabi. And you've got to be a pro or mega wealthy to go there, because it's literally several $100s per wave. And if you want to rent the place out, it's tens of thousands of dollars a day. And the electricity costs to run it are huge. The final one is technology is put out by Wave Garden. And that's the one that's most interesting. That's the one that has over 70 projects worldwide. And they have this technology. I can't really explain it because it's like these baffles that move in the water and push out a wave. And it's the most economical from an electricity consumption costs, and that's why these resorts are using Wave Garden technology to partner with around these resorts. So I want to say real quickly though, the investment opportunity here, even if you're not a surfer, is these homes at all these resorts that are in pre-sale right now are kind of cheap. And the reason why is because most people don't know about this thing. And the people that do know about it are like young surfers who don't have any money. So I think there's a huge opportunity to poach some of these homes, put down payments on them or like reservations. And then once the crowd finds out about it, these home values are going to spike in value. And a lot of these resorts and developments need that pre-money to actually get the thing going. So a lot of these developments are kind of like slowly building until, the masses find out about it.
Super interesting. Yeah, there's a bunch. We'll link out to some in the show notes of things going on, but they're all over Texas, all over Florida,
Germany, South Korea, Japan,
the
UK, all over Brazil, Mexico. They're coming in everywhere.
Cool. Well, let's move it to the next topic here, which is Mongolia. So I said at the beginning, I'm a steampunk Mongolian coal miner. Mongolia we want to talk a little bit about Mongolia because it's a country that has seen rapid advancement. It's changed a lot. I was in Mongolia about 9 years ago and I had an incredible experience. It was so beautiful. One of the places that felt kind of most like the plains of Wyoming that I've ever been to. And over the past 30 years, Mongolia has continued to just boom, 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 boom. Honestly, a lot of it's come down to a couple things: coal and trade with China. They're China's number one trading partner. And in 2024, Mongolia's economic growth is projected to be about 5.3, down from 7.2% in 2023. And growth is forecast to average around 6.3% over the next couple of years, focusing on mineral production. The reason we want to talk about it is because U.S. State Department, has been releasing announcements over the last couple of months. One, talking about how the U.S.-Mongolia relations are at the strongest point in history, and that they're continuing to pursue cooperation in areas of mutual interest, including clean energy, critical minerals, food security, and the digital economy. And they're going to be launching a nonstop passenger flights between the U.S. and Mongolia sometime in the future. So, on our theme of continuing to see where the U.S. is going and who they're aligning with, Mongolia is on that list. So, Cody, why is the U.S. interested in Mongolia right now?
Let's bring up a map where Mongolia is. It's sandwiched between China
Russia. And China.
It is not a better illustration. I don't think there's any other country in the world that's a better illustration of why the US or an external power would want power or influence over it, because it's right now in the middle of the Western world's adversaries, China and Russians. So of course, everyone else outside wants some sort of partnership with Mongolia to mess around with China and Russia.
And to be clear, when they talk about their, we're at the best relations ever, I think a lot of it's like PR. Who knows what that actually looks like? Considering that the reality is 84% of all Mongolian exports go to China. Like I said, they're the number one export trade partner. And when I was there, this was almost 10 years ago. I mean, it feels like you're in China. You cross the border. I took a train from Beijing up across the border. And like culturally, it shifts a little bit, but you're there on the ground. You're like, there's Chinese companies, Chinese businessmen everywhere. It's just they're doing trade back and forth.
I think, like you said, a lot of what the U.S. is saying is let's just say a propaganda or some sort of messaging to make it look like Mongolia is shifting towards the U.S. or the West. But there are several events that have happened recently that indicate Mongolia, in fact, is more aligned with the U.S. And one thing the U.S. is doing right now, they're building a new embassy in Mongolia. And I think that's one of the biggest, maybe not like expenses for foreign relations, but it's a very symbolic investment that the U.S. is saying, hey, we believe in you so much. We want to establish trade so much. We're going to build a new embassy here. That's how much we like you guys. We're building a new house in your country. So I think that's one of the things that the U.S. can point to the most of how much they want to be friends with Mongolia. I also think if you want to go super deep, what is it? 84% of Mongolia's exports are to China. I think 84. Yeah. It's huge. That's like,
and 51% of all of it is coal.
Is coal. So 60% of the electricity produced in China right now comes from coal power plants. And if 50% of that coal comes from Mongolia, China is super dependent on Mongolia's coal exports. So of course the US wants to stick their nose in there and potentially interrupt or have power over that export that Mongolia has to China. It's super strategic geopolitically. And if you want to ignore the war games and 3D chess that's going on, maybe the US wants to put pressure on China to clean up its greenhouse emissions, which are, really fueled by coal burning within China right now. And that's part of the policy that the U.S. is trying to implement within Mongolia, is to have all these clean energy initiatives and use all the rare earth metals to do all kinds of, clean energy and all that. So I think that story, which it seems like kind of boring, if you dive into it deep, you're like, oh wait, the U.S. really is playing this geopolitical game and trying to get a hold of China's energy security.
There's also an interesting thing that went on. So there's the great coal theft case of Mongolia and China in 2022. There was some allegations that came up that coal was being illegally transported across the Chinese border. So again, think about how much coal. 51% of all exports from Mongolia are coal, and a bunch of high-ranking politicians and business leaders were implicated in this. Apparently, we're not talking like a little bit of coal. We're talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars of coal being shuffled across the border without paying any taxes to the Mongolian government.
And coal's cheap, so that's a lot of coal.
What's that?
Coal is cheap, so that's got to be cheap. a lot of coal, like trains and trains and trains and trains and trains of coal.
Some of the estimates were that 6 million tons of coking coal were stolen. 6 million tons. So what's happened in Mongolia is that a lot of the people have said that they want more transparency and they want to create an exchange that provides more transparency into where things are being sold. And I think this also potentially aligns with with the US being involved, because doing business with China often is fraught with these challenges of people skirting the rules, and there's thought to be more transparency related doing the business with the US and other Western countries. So there's some pressure from the people to have more transparency in what they're doing.
And if you think about it, if you're Mongolia, you're more or less getting used by China right now. Of course, you have this theft of coal, but there's, of course, tons of diplomatic and cultural pressure from the Chinese into Mongolia. I mean, historically, it's been like that for, thousands of years. The Mongols, hello, this is like a ever going story, and with the Russians as well, just there being some like conflict along those border lines. But maybe that's one of the reasons why Mongolia is opening up more to the West and to the US, thinking like, hey, this is our chance to like get China to stop getting on our backs about everything that they want out of our country. One thing that happened, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, I wanted to mention, is that the ICC, which is the International Court of whatever, there's an arrest warrant out for Putin, basically. And I don't want to go too deep into that geopolitical story, because obviously there's this, who's actually going to arrest Putin. But Putin visited Mongolia a week ago, and there's all this outrage that Mongolia did not arrest Putin while he was in Mongolia.
Yeah, what are you going to do? You going to arrest him?
Well, of course. I mean, like someone who's thinking about this rationally is like, if Mongolia arrested Putin, like that would start a whole nother war. Like, of course, Mongolia doesn't want to start this issue here. But I think the bigger picture to think about is that the world in general, trade routes are changing, alliances are shifting, and the idea that another country would accuse Mongolia of doing something wrong, which is not arresting Putin, is one of the wildest narratives you can think of. Could you think 5 years ago that people will be mad at Mongolia for not arresting Putin? That's a wild story.
I think also one reason we want to talk about Mongolia and why it actually matters and it's interesting is that Mongolia is one of the last great lands of adventure. It's the only place where they don't have fences. They've got this like public kind of land initiative where you can take a horse or a car and just drive across the country. You camp along the way. I mentioned I was there about 10 years ago. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Rolling, incredible plains. It's wide open spaces. Talk about big sky like Montana. That's what it's like in Mongolia. And they have one of the most epic things. It's called the Mongol Rally. It's one of the most epic trips I've ever heard of. You buy a shitty car and you drive it across the country, and hopefully you make it. It takes about 3 weeks to a month. And we'll play a little video from the Mongol Rally of what this looks like.
And that's $1.
These guys called the Adventurous started it like a decade ago, and people go out there in the summertime and they drive across Mongolia and they drive across the whole plains. It's an epic adventure. One of the coolest things I've seen on the planet.
Isn't there some rule though, like you have to buy the car in the country or something? Because these cars are like horrible. Oh, you have to bring it. Okay, that's right.
You have to ship your car in, and you got to take it with you. And they encourage you to do it. Bring the shittiest car possible, because
I mean, there's like tuk-tuks and like 3-cylinder, like 1960s cars and just things you've never seen before.
No, it's super interesting, and also we're seeing that there's more access to Mongolia because United Airlines just launched a bunch of new destinations for the summer 2025, and it's interesting because United's a company that they kind of lead the way in terms of going to new destinations. So they added a nonstop service from Tokyo to Ulaanbaatar. So fairly easy to get to Tokyo from the US, I mean, relatively, and then to Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia. They've got direct flights to Greenland from Newark, direct flights weekly from Newark to Palermo, Italy, to Madeira, Portugal for the surfers out there, Faro, Portugal, to Senegal. And a bunch of other flights that are to new destinations direct from the US and direct from Tokyo.
I used to be a United guy. I still am. You know, I had the highest status and did all that stuff because I flew so much with them. And I used to take advantages. United's a weird airline. I don't know if they have government contracts, because I used to take these new flights. Every year they announce new flights. And one year they flew direct from Newark to Guangzhou, or it was kind of like a second tier city in China. And the ticket was cheap. I mean, a round trip ticket was cheap, and it was a premium business. It wasn't the top, but it was kind of mid tier. I want to say it was like $500 round trip or something like that. And this is, one of those 15-hour flights. So super cheap. I get on the flight, and I swear to you, this is a brand new Dreamliner 787. There was maybe 40 people on the flight. Maybe. It was creepy how empty the flight was, but I think
they upgrade you. You gotta get upgraded.
No, I got my own like aisle, my whole row. I just laid down. But what I wanted to mention though is I don't know if these flights are gonna, if this is the same thing happening. There's probably some like two governments making a deal like, hey, let's open up a route so we can get some of your U.S. tourism to come over here, and there's probably some government like subsidies to make that possible. But
I think it's also they have to figure out what are the new destinations going to be. Palermo's hot. Palermo's a place that people want to go to. I think from my perspective, there's a new wave of tourism that's coming, and it comes as millennials continue to get more purchasing power and go different places. They want to go different places than their parents went. They want more off the beaten path type locations and more adventure travel, more things that feel like travel versus vacation. And that's my take. There may be some government contracts, but there also probably are just testing out some locations and seeing what are the routes that we can run, and can we find that if, let's just say that 3 of the 10 hit and they become things that they run reliably, well, it doesn't cost them that much to test it out.
Absolutely. And I agree with you there. There's that adventurous spirit that United is trying to, not Spirit Airlines, but that United is trying to push with these destinations. But as I'm looking at this list, I'm thinking, let's look at like Madeira, Portugal. Of course, the Madeira tourism industry is like, yeah, you're going to have 3 weekly flights with, 600 or however many people fit on 3 flights to our island who are going to spend money. Yeah, we'll help you out here. We'll do anything possible to get this flight to land here. So on this list for me, or what's your favorite one on this list? I'm going to pick one. What one are you going to pick?
For me, number 1 is Palermo.
Really?
Yeah. I want to go to Palermo. Sicily has been a place I've wanted to go for a long time. It's hard to get to. And yeah, Palermo is number 1. I would say Madeira is number 2.
Okay. So, and by the way, anybody's listening, you can look at this list. We'll bring it up here, but all these flights start in late May, early July, or early June of next year, 2025. So late May, early June. And all of these destinations have around like 2 to 4 weekly flights. So my number 1 destination on here is Dakar, Senegal. There's waves there. It's kind of a weird place. There's the rally race, Dakar to the Dakar rally race. I'd love to go see. So anybody wants to do Dakar, let's do it. Send us an email. I want to go explore Dakar. And I agree with you. Madeira's got some great surf there too. So we should make that our goal for 2025.
Awesome. Today, big takeaway: go to Mongolia. Look at psychedelic investing. Enjoy your guys' Halloween. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Have a happy Halloween to everyone. We're going to be, I don't know about you, but we'll be trick-or-treating.
Oh yeah.
Are you, what is the trick-or-treating age? So when does it stop?
When does it stop? I'm not to that phase yet. My oldest is,
still in it.
Yeah. So they're still on it. It's all about the candy right now. But I don't think, how old's your son? How old is he right now?
He's 2.5.
Yeah, he's 2.5. He's not there yet. He's not like
there. He's never even had candy, really. He's probably not going to have much candy at all. But he is going to dress up, and he's very excited about that. He's been excited about pumpkin pies. He watched a show called Daniel Tiger where they made a pumpkin pie from a pumpkin, and he talked about it all week. So we made a pumpkin pie. We cut the pumpkin in half. We baked it. We made a pumpkin pie from scratch. He loved it. So he had his pumpkin pie, and he's more excited about pumpkin pie and about dressing up as a lion.
Well, I will say, like, it all comes back around. I too am more excited about pumpkin pie than I am about dressing up. So
for sure,
life is
and also about the candy.
Yeah, for sure.
I've become more of a candy Scrooge every year. I'm like, I don't want any candy. Am I kidding? Candy. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Again, like I said, the best way, if you did enjoy this episode, to support us is to write us a review. Write us a review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Share the episode with a friend, and we would love to hear from you. If you write a good review, we'll read it at the beginning of the episode. Thank you to all of our new listeners. Hope you guys have an incredible week. Happy Halloween.
See ya.